morning, gang. This morning we're going to, or this afternoon, we're going to look at yogurt. I love yogurt, and I make 99% of the yogurt I eat, I make myself. Now, this is a Breville yogurt maker. You probably can't get one anymore. I don't know whether you can or you can't. But the yogurt containers are baby food size, and they have a date marker on the top, so you can twist the top to the date that the yogurt matured and was ready. When you put this little machine on, it used to have a timer, but this would be at least 30 years old. It used to have a timer. It doesn't have a timer now, so I have to remember that, but it is very good. And at the moment I'm experimenting, and I thought I'd take you along for the ride. Now, with the yogurt maker, I just make an ordinary batch of yogurt, and for me that is the jug. It's a litre and a little bit. It says it's a litre, but if you fill it right up, it's slightly more than a litre. So I use that to make my yogurt in, because I know that a litre fills each of those 7 cups. Theoretically, 1 per day. I use half of 1 per day, and I have it in the evening because it kind of settles my tummy before I go to bed. It's a really nice go to bed thing. And this yogurt batch here is a coconut yogurt. I made it, you can make any yogurt recipe that you like. I always like to have whole milk, and then into that I put about a cup of powdered milk, full cream, and a little bit of the last batch, so about half of one of these jugs of the last batch. Whip that up, makes a litre, and then I decant it into these little juggy things, and I put it into the Breville yogurt maker. You can put it into the big yogurt makers, or before I had this, I didn't have an electric anything, and I just used to put it in a jug and stand the jug in warm water on top of the stove. At night time, when the stove had gone out, put a blanket or a towel around it so it kept like a vacuum flask, kept nice and warm, and in the morning there would be the yogurt. In the winter it took a little bit longer, but I like yogurt so it's really firm set. I don't like sloppy yogurt, I like firm set yogurt, and that's why I put in the cup of milk. Now, if you were on a diet or worried about fat, you could use skim. So you could use, I suppose you could use skim milk for the actual liquid, but I don't. I just use full fat everything. And I actually put some desiccated coconut in it as well, just to give it a coconut taste. And sometimes at the moment I'm very much in love with coconut sugar, so I sweeten it with coconut sugar to my taste. Yogurt isn't fussy. Yogurt is just milk that's going off. That's why I think it's so crazy when you go into the supermarket and they have past the use-by date. Yogurt doesn't have a use-by date. It just keeps getting better. Like women. Anyway, I would show you something that was unexpected today. I've been making oat milk. Well, I thought, why not try to make yogurt out of the leftovers from the oat milk? So, today, well, late last night, because I was doing it at some extraordinary time last night. Late last night I decided that's what I would do. I would experiment with oat milk. So I used part cow's milk, part oat milk. I probably only used about, in this jug, maybe a cup of oat milk, and then did my normal yogurt thing. When this morning I turned it off at about 1 o'clock, I suppose, 'cause I don't like it going all night when it's a new experiment, so I turned it off about 1 o'clock in the morning. And then this morning, early burly, I turned it on again, and it looked like it was going well. And then I went out, I had to go to the bank and do this and that, and when I came back, the yogurt had split. There's, you can see the whey in there, and there's the curds, and it was probably something about the oat milk didn't go well with ordinary milk. It didn't do a good match. I'll experiment with doing a full thing. And so what I'm doing is this. I am emptying it. Okay. I'm emptying it into my trusty cheesecloth. Oh, to die for. I'm emptying it into my trusty cheesecloth, and then I will hang it and I will let it drain. So then I'll have two things. I'll have a sweet dessert cheese, which would be really good to cut up apricots or sultanas or something like that, something sweet into it. I suppose you could use a sweet herb like mint, or well, it's up to you, the taste, but that's what I would do. And I'll show you what I've got. There we are. I make drain things. I don't know whether you can see that. There it is. I make drain things enough that I've got a hook underneath the cupboard there, and I'll just drain that until it's really set, and I'll use the whey. I want to make some biscuits. I'll use the whey. So I've got some bran from out of when I did oat milk. I've got the leftovers from that, and I will have the whey from that, and I will use that with peanut butter and 1 egg and enough coconut flour that it kind of stiffens up, and I'll make some biscuits. So there will be nothing wasted. You know, you could toss out the whey, but what a waste. It tastes beautiful. You could toss out the yogurt that didn't work, but it still tastes wonderful. And you could toss out, if you did that, you wouldn't have any cheese. So instead of thinking, oh, I failed, why not think, what can I do with what I have? The Buddha said, do what you can with what you've got where you are. He didn't say throw it into the bin and start again. He said do what you can with what you've got where you are. And that's what I've done. I've taken what other people could call a failure, and instead of one product I have three. I will have the yogurt here, which looks like it's coming along beautifully. I will have yogurt cheese, which is over there dripping away, and I'll have whey. And out of that, I will magic up some biscuits, because biscuits are not hard. Biscuits are, you just put them together. You don't need a recipe, you just need to feel that you can roll them out and cut them up and make a nice size, and then you can do it, you know, and cook it. And some people don't even do that. So my whole point in letting you see this is that maybe in your kitchen, when you think something hasn't worked, you can change your mind and say, what can I make out of this? How can I make something better out of what other people would call a failure, or words to that effect? So I am going to go off and have lunch, and you're going to go off and see if you can get a Breville. This is a Breville yogurt. Oh, it's not a Breville, it's there you are, leading you astray. It's a moulinex, Moulinex. It's a moulinex yogurt maker. Comes with all of that. It comes with the jars, and it comes with the lids that you can change, and it doesn't come with a cat. This is the cat. Okay? And I actually have lost a couple of those jars, and I've discovered over time that the jars, if you've got the lids, the jars match Heinz baby food in the glass jars, but they also match the what's the brand name? Doesn't say, but you'll see it. It's a horseradish puree, and it comes in a small jar. Comes in a small jar with a little red lid, horseradish, and that fits that exactly. But I imagine that if you got 7 horseradish jars, or you could get a horseradish and a mint sauce and whatever, I think it's Master Foods, I'm not sure, and you made up a set, you could make your own yogurt maker just by getting a pan that had exactly the right size and putting 7 of those in, or 4 or whatever, and doing it to keep it warm. It would be just the same as that. I've gotten used to using that. It's convenient and it's good, but there are lots of alternatives. You don't have to go with the electrified model. If you're off the grid and downsizing, it's good to practice, you know, and I imagine we're going to have brownouts and blackouts and goodness knows what in times to come. So finding food that you can make without having to use electric stuff is a good idea, because you could cook water on a barbecue outside, and then you could part fill a pan and put 7 jars of yogurt in it and put a lid on it and put blankets around it, and bingo, you would have yogurt. Not a problem. Yogurt will grow. And so experiment, and experiment with leftovers, and experiment with wonderful things you can do. In the summertime, when I've got my berries producing, they don't at the moment, we're through that, now the other side, I put berries in there. Sometimes I feel like putting herbs. Sometimes I put nuts. Right at the moment I got coconut. You're in charge, and don't be afraid to experiment, and if it doesn't work, don't throw it away. Sorry, I've got a little bit of cold. Think, what can I do with what I've got where I am? Before I go, I'll tell you a story. One of my students, she had a very demanding husband, and she thought to please him, she'd make bread. He was always telling her how his mum made bread, and so she thought she'd do it. And she got a really simple recipe and started belting away at it, and Anyway, when she got it to the proof stage, it wasn't rising. Obviously, she wasn't in a terribly warm place because yeast will rise. That's what it does. It's its job. Anyway, so husband is shortly coming home and she figures that this isn't going to rise. Sorry. So she takes it right out in the backyard and she buries it in the compost heap. Anyway, later that evening, her husband is standing at the window in the kitchen and he looks out and he says, "Oh my goodness, sweetheart, we have the biggest mushroom you've ever seen coming up out of the compost heap." And what had happened, of course, is that bread was perfectly okay. The rising didn't happen because she was too impatient. She probably, A, it probably wasn't warm enough, and B, she was in too much a hurry. And putting it in the compost heap, obviously she had a very good compost heap, and it was nice and warm in there, and the bread had come out of the compost heap. So she had to fess up, and I'm not sure whether she baked the bread or not. But I know from her experience that you can prove your bread in a compost heap. I actually have cooked a ham in a compost heap, a very good compost heap, and I've cooked a fish in my dishwasher. So, and why I did that was because I had a big fish and a small pan, and I thought if I wrap it up very securely in tin foil and plastic and put it on a short hot cycle, it will cook. And it did, just in case you're interested. Namaste.